is pretty complicated and complex, but clearly what will happen is that the town will end up, in my opinion, spending tens of millions of dollars in a very inefficient way. And in order to meet all of the needs, over time, it's very likely the town will end up spending more money if it's not all done as one package.
Can I just jump in? The superintendent's done a great job giving you a lot of the details in terms of how this would, what would happen. But just at a high level, I think it's worth saying right at the outset that, a quality public school system is the backbone of this community. That has long been recognized in Winchester. And if we don't move forward with this project to rebuild the high school, then what's really at risk is we're jeopardizing the quality, sustaining the quality of our public school system in this community. So there's lots and lots of specific details to support that, but that's fundamentally what we believe is at stake here.
I just had a follow-up question about the enrollment numbers. Is that something that's very recent, that you're having hundreds of more high school students in the last 2 years, or is that something that is just something that steadily has happened over several years?
No, the school district has experienced enrollment increases going back to 1998, every year since then. In 2000, or actually 2003, the high school enrollment was 907. So enrollment over the last 10 years has increased by over 200 students at the high school, and will increase by another almost 200 students in the next 4 years. And that's all representative and reflective of the increase in enrollment that has occurred across the system. Our kindergarten class sizes now, our kindergarten enrollment is dramatically larger, and has been over the last 10 to 12 to 15 years than previously. And those are students that just grow through our system and eventually get to the high school.
And I think you know this already, but it's extraordinary the enrollment growth that Winchester has had over the last decade, because statewide enrollment in K through 12 has been flat, even slightly down. So Winchester is one of only a very small number of communities that have seen enrollment growth of this dramatic. And again, I think that the reason we're having that is it's reflective of this is a high quality school system, and that's very attractive to families to live here and make them work here and raise their children here.
Another interesting piece of enrollment is that since 2000, the town's enrollment, the community's enrollment, total enrollment has grown by 1% to 2%, where the school enrollment over that same period of time has grown by 28 to 30%. So the nature of the demographics have changed dramatically.
Could I just add what Bill was saying? Of the work that he's described, very little of it would the MSBA, Master Building, participate in the 33% funding. So the problem with it, if you do it incrementally, the town would have to pay the lion's share of it.
Just in my reading of kind of how the project has changed, it has seemed like the project has jumped up by a few million for the last few months, and I just wanted to get, what is the actual cost of it right now, and what are you hoping to get from the MSBA on Wednesday?
Before we launch into that,
oh yeah, sure.
I had a piece or two about.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to rush ahead.
No, it's a great question that you asked, and it's a critical one. But I also, you'd asked us in the educational facility needs. There's also within the project, the building will be more functional for the entire town. And part of what I'm referring to with that is we're grouping a lot of the large community spaces together to make it much more available for others to use as well. So the cafeteria, the auditorium, the library, some of the lab space will all be in close proximity to each other. And part of the intent behind that is that the building will be, the more groups can evaluate use of the building on a much easier basis than they currently have. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Lorraine, what was the cost estimate of this option at PSR? 126?
Yeah, almost 127, I believe.
127.2.
127.2. Right, I was going to, so PSR was the preliminary schematic report. That was the first, one of the first official or midterm reports that went to MSBA as part of the feasibility study.
And when was that?
That was back in November.
Okay.
It was updated end of, in January. And so this option had an estimated price tag at that point of $126.2 million. The reason I'm bringing that up is there is a perception that the price tag has continued to rise by millions of dollars over time. And in fact, the estimated cost of the project that I have a high level of confidence that the MSBA board will approve on Wednesday morning is 129.9. So going from that preliminary schematic report to full schematic design, which is the proposal that the MSBA has reviewed and is presenting to the board on Wednesday, the cost has increased by $3.7 million. And that was directly a result of more detailed planning, more detailed review of the concept. The good news is that it's been reported out there that this project is going to cost $145 million, $135 million. Many other hundreds of millions. But the proposal is a 129.9, and so the EFPBC, in my opinion, has really done a very good job working with our design team to stay within the general parameters that MSBA had asked us to back at the PSR, and we've looked at the project very, very carefully over the last 6 to 8 months to get to this point.
The Mass School Building Authority is the state partner for communities and rebuilding schools. It has dozens and dozens of projects every year, and has an extraordinarily rigorous process that communities have to go through, all the hoops that they have to jump through along the way, and sometimes to our frustration. But that's designed to ensure that ultimately the project is the best possible project to address the educational and facility needs in the community and the most cost effective. So it's very typical as the design continues to be refined and as the project goes from phase to phase that the cost estimates will move quite a bit because of that additional work that's being done, and the idea being that when the project is approved by the MSBA board, that there's a high level of confidence in the cost estimate at that point moving forward, so that both the community and the state know, what the cost will be and what the result will be when the project is completed. The other thing I wanted to add about that's very pertinent in this situation with respect to state participation, which, as the superintendent said, we expect will be roughly 1/3 of the cost will be covered by the MSBA. That'll be finalized on Wednesday. But what's unusual is that there's huge demand across the state for renovations and rebuilding and brand new school buildings. There's many schools that are old and not in good condition. So the MSBA obviously has limited resources, and they have to ruthlessly prioritize projects. And in a community the size of Winchester, they would typically only do one project at a time. And in our case, when the Vincent Owen project was still in the feasibility stage several years ago, we invited the leadership of the MSBA to come out. They already understood the enrollment pressures in Winchester because of all the work done on the feasibility study for Vincent Owen Elementary School. They came out and they toured the high school. They left after that and they urged the town. They said, "Don't wait. Put your letter of interest, of intent in now, because of the enrollment growth in the system that was kind of coming to the high school, and because of the significant deficiencies in the facility the superintendent and others have described." So we actually were able to move forward with both projects essentially in parallel, and that was an atypical decision for the MSBA to make.
Can I ask a follow-up on your behalf?
Okay.
I think you asked about the amount of the MSBA. Maybe Lorraine or someone could give the dollar amount. And maybe also describe some of the ways in which the town has enhanced its rate of reimbursement through how the project is designed.
Sure. So I guess one thing I want to make sure of is that you understood the number that Bill was talking about is total project cost as opposed to construction cost. There's two factors that go into total project cost. There's the construction cost, the bricks and mortars, and then there's what we call associated costs or soft costs, which make up about 20 to 25%. The 129.9 is the total project cost, so that is the total project.
Could you break it down?
Sure. So the 101 million is the estimated construction cost. That is the bricks and mortar. It includes some escalation. It includes construction contingency. Actually includes design contingency,
Right.
not construction contingency.
Okay.
So it includes factors because we're at schematic design, we're at concept. These are not bid documents, so there has to be some contingencies built in as you develop the plans that factors in. On the soft cost side, there are fees, legal fees, your OPM's fee, your designer's fee, furnishings and equipment, so the tables and chairs, the technology components, moving costs, temporary modulars that are needed during phased construction, those fall into the soft cost bracket. So together, they total the 129.9. So I just want to make sure you understand the total project cost, because some people compare that or think when they hear that that's the contractor's cost.
And then Lorraine, could you give the price of the cost that the town will have to absorb?
Sure. So working with the MSBA, they have a number of reimbursement rates, and they have a sliding scale for reimbursement that starts with 31, and then factors get added based on poverty ratio, wealth factor, and free school lunches. So working with the district, your base rate is 33.95%. Designed into the project currently are sustainable design initiatives that are going to get the district 2 additional points in green schools. Additionally, the buildings have been so well maintained and that the maintenance program for your district is so well developed that you received another 1.39% in maintenance reimbursement points. Because this is a renovation rebuild, you are getting 4.58% additional reimbursement for the renovation project. If this was a new building, you wouldn't get that point. So you're getting almost another over 4.5%. So in total, your district is receiving 42.92% of reimbursement. It's important. So it's important to understand that that is based on what the MSBA considers eligible reimbursement costs. So they have caps all along the way: cap on the building cost, cap on the site improvement cost, and cap on the soft costs. There's things they don't participate in. They don't participate in legal fees because they're your town is paying for your own legal fees. They don't participate in permit fees, which the town has waived because it seems like you're paying yourself and then they're going to ask you to reimburse you for that. So they have.
Don't participate in modular.
They don't participate in the modular classrooms, the temporary classrooms that are required. So there's an effort that it's called a 3011, the MSBA form that you go through, and certain things move into the ineligible column. So they're paying 42.92% on the eligible items out of that.
In the dollar amount,
Yep. So the maximum, and it's a maximum total facilities grant. It's because there's an audit process. They have to make sure you've kept the steps as you go ahead. The maximum total facilities grant available to the district is I'm going to round it up to 5. It's $44.5 million of that 129.9.
So the key part of that is that the team has worked very, very hard to maximize the reimbursement rate from the state. And that's so with an eye toward, obviously, the cost that needs to be borne by Winchester taxpayers, trying to minimize that and maximize how much we can get from state participation.
So if all contingencies are used in the course of the project and it costs $129.9 million, and the maximum facilities grant of 44.5 is applied, then the cost to Winchester for this project is $85.4 million. The way,
$5 million contingency in the soft cost, is that?
There is a $5 million construction contingency, because that, again, this is a renovation, so you have to factor in some contingencies, especially on the construction side. There's another $500,000 for owner's contingency, should we need additional testing, should the owner need to hire additional consultants during the process, so there's a contingency for that. There's a GMP contingency. This project will pursue a construction manager at risk approach as opposed to a design bid build, where you give the project to the lowest eligible general contractor. So this is a partnership with a phased renovation of this nature. We want to work with a construction manager to work closely with you through the design phase. They also have a construction contingency built in of $2.8 million. So there's quite a bit, and then obviously design contingency and escalation built in there, about $10 million in total of contingencies at this point built into the project.
This is something that may have been addressed before, and I just didn't catch it. But with using the existing site, I know with phasing, the plan is to utilize the summer months a lot. Is there going to be a lot of disruption of classroom time, or a lot of use of modular classrooms during the 2014 to 2017 construction time?
so if the vote is approved in December, then construction will begin next summer, 2014, and phase one will be underway. The pilings necessary for the foundation work for all three additions, we hope, will be put into the ground. The construction of those additions will begin, and the demolition of Wing A of the building, that's the academic wing closest to Skillings Road, will be demoed. And phase one is scheduled to take 14 to 16 months. So our hope is that through the 14-15 school year, between September and June, that work will be completed, phase one will be completed. While that's happening, there'll be approximately 25 to 30 portable classrooms that will be set up on site. So those portable classrooms will house classrooms from basically the Wing A. And at the end of phase one, which we're estimating to take about one school year, we'll be able to move into that Wing A and use it. And then phase two will take another school year, the 15-16 school year. Again, 14 to 16 months. We'll demo pods B and C, wings B and C, and the portable classrooms again will house students and staff during that phase. We will have moved into pod the A wing. We will have moved into the new dining commons, kitchen, servery area, as well as the library, the new library that will be constructed on the second floor. And by the end of the 2015-16 school year, phase two will be completed. For the beginning of September 2016, if the schedule works well, which we're expecting it will, we will be able to occupy all of the academic wings, A, B, and C, the brand-new reconstructed wings. And then Phase 3 will be the construction of the music addition, music department addition, as well as the renovations to the auditorium and the gymnasium, and that will go through the 16-17 school year. And then we'll be all done.
There's no question this is a concern that always comes up when there's a rebuild of an existing site. I actually have my daughter's a freshman in the school now, so these daughter's a freshman there, and other members of the PBC, so very personal statements as well. And in looking closely at the plans that the superintendent has described and the way that they will minimize to the greatest extent possible the impact on the students there. I think they've got a great plan. I'll also tell you my younger daughter at the Ambrose School actually had one of her years in one of the portables there, because before we built the overgrounding, it was actually the best classroom in all our time at Ambrose was the portable. So that's not necessarily negative at all. So while you can't help but have some disruption, I think the plan that the team has put together is very carefully thought through how to manage the transition issues, how to minimize the disruption from construction. And the other important point I think that a lot of people in the community don't understand is because of the way this is designed and being phased, the current students don't have to wait until 3 years have gone by to start to see the benefit from the rebuilding of the facility. Because it's being done in phases, they will start to immediately see the benefits of the different areas of the school as they are completed and rebuilt.
That phase 1, the wing A, what does that include? Does that include science labs, or I guess what rooms are?
You put me on the spot. I
sorry.
haven't memorized the floor plans in each building, but we can add it up.
There is the Winchester project site. Is that all up to date? All the information up there is up
Yes.
to date? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Description of phasing.
Okay, yeah.
Each component and the timing on it.
Okay, good. Can you tell me what the age of the
there are no
building is now?
science
When was the high school built?
71?
1971?
Opened in 1971.
It was under construction for 3 years.
It was designed in the late 60s, mid to late 60s.
1860.
Just to be clear, on the swing space, it's going to be confined to the portable classrooms. You're not going to do anything with Mystic or Park?
The plan, that's right. So the swing space plan is as proposed, does not impact Mystic or Parkhurst. Right.
All of the children, all the students will be kept on site. All right.
For change, I'll ask a question.
And welcome also, Ellen.
You don't know, but I've been through this whole.
Right, no.
How do you answer on the issue of maintaining academic excellence? How do you answer people who say, well, the high school just was designated a blue ribbon school, and it's a blue ribbon school in that old facility which you want to spend millions of dollars fixing up?
Good question.
Yeah.
Why should we pay the money if you can get such a good education with what we have?
So first, we're very proud of that recognition. That recognition is reflective of the very hard work of our staff, the very hard work of our students, the support of all of our parents, and the support of the community. I think our principal, Dr. Gwynn, said it best when he said that this recognition is really reflective of the success of the whole system, the entire system. The education that our students and the experience that they have beginning in preschool. I think that the answer to that question goes right back to the comments that Jason made at the outset about continuing to ensure the quality of education that this community has experienced and expects. we cannot assume that that the quality of student performance will continue into the future given the current condition of that facility. We're already, I think it's fair to say that we're getting by with the state of the science labs. Again, our staff are being creative in developing workarounds to provide the kind of experience, the educational experience that our students need. But at some point, if we have to cram 30 to 32 students into a tiny science classroom for instruction, and then not be able to have the opportunity on an ad hoc basis to go into the lab and provides those experiential hands-on learning experiences, then that'll impact our science curriculum. I think the same can be said regarding the other spaces. We're experiencing, we periodically experience challenging environmental conditions in the building. There is, there are occasions when we have moisture penetration that comes inside from windows that need to be replaced, from an exterior skin that has gaps and holes, to roofs that leak. And over time, that creates environmental issues which impact the health of staff and the health of students. And so serious dollars have to be spent just to patch and mitigate those safety and health concerns. And so that becomes an issue. We had to take, last year, from October through the end of the year, we had to take offline a math classroom that couldn't be used. So that impacts how we can schedule math classes and where those classes have to go, especially with increasing enrollment. That will continue to be an issue.
Also, from an educational standpoint, I think I'd also bring it to, right, the world is changing around us. So there's from the federal government and state adopting Common Core standards to some of the expectations that we have for students and what a quality education will consist of. We need to be able to adapt to meet all of those changes. Bill has talked about some of the science needs. There's a lot more rigor being added in the science and engineering areas. We need to be able to meet the needs of an ever-changing range of students and what they are, what's required for us to offer them from a disability standpoint, from an access to the educational programming standpoint, right, free and equal access. We need the space and the environment that will allow us to do that successfully, not just last year or next year, but into the next 20 and 40 and 60 years.
The reason that we're designated a Blue Ribbon school, and the reason that we traditionally do so well on MCAS exams, for example, at all levels, and have won many other awards, is because Winchester has always been passionate about education, because we recognize how important education is to this community. So we've always prioritized education when it comes to our budgets every year, and it's always a battle every year. Resources are always tight, but we prioritize education. We've always worked really hard to maintain and rebuild our facilities and to address the enrollment growth we've had over the last decade. So that's why we've been able to have that excellence. And I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that we've struggled for years now to overcome the deficiencies at the high school, and it's an amazing credit to the staff and the teachers and students that we have so many workarounds to continue to excel. But I don't think it's an overstatement to say that if we don't move ahead and rebuild the high school with this plan, this time, we will jeopardize the continued excellence of our public school system.
Ellen, can I add
That's
just
the
a
risk,
sorry.
that's the risk you run. Question, the flip side of the question, Ellen, or the extension of the question is, can the high school with the current facility in the same condition 10 years from now win that improvement designation? So there's probably a clear equation that could be constructed somewhere in some math or science class that could tell you how the facility as a piece of the educational puzzle, children, teachers, parents, school, town-wide support all play into that accomplishment. The facility has a role in that accomplishment where the condition of the facility begins to run the risk of being able to deliver a first-rate education program. It's probably a very hard thing to forecast, but 20 years ago, people planned and delivered to the town a product that served it very well for the last 20 years, but it's clearly now in need of substantial upgrades. So it's about planning for the next 40 to 50 years and making sure that the system has a facility that doesn't deteriorate and detract from the ability to deliver.
I'll give you a specific example, actually, and I've been in the school many times, of course, as we all have. I took the tour, and we encourage everybody to go and take the tour. And I was actually shocked. One specific example was you come to the area which is supposed to be where we're doing like robotics and computer-aided design, and basically the heart of the future, which is our STEM curriculum. And it basically still looks like a 1950s auto shop. It looks
That's
like,
what it was.
that's what it once was. It was an auto shop because, back in the 1970s and early 80s, auto mechanics, and that was a very important skill set. And that was something the school was good at and excelled at that time. That is not where we are today. That's not where the future is. That should be a high-tech lab where the students are doing computer-aided design and preparing themselves for for STEM careers and for the global economy we have today. They've made patches and workarounds to try to refit that, but the reality is you can only do so much with that. And that's a specific example that really hit home with me.
Ellen, could I have a couple of things? And that is, as we all know, we're living in a collaborative world, so the concept of education in the future is the so-called 21st century
Excuse me,
learning.
is this an open meeting or can I shut the door?
The concept of what was popularly called 21st century learning, and it has to do with collaboration. And right now, the school delivered 40 years ago, it was very departmental oriented, so each department is by itself. And there's very little cross-fertilization, and it's because of the structure of the school itself. Whereas in this new concept, the idea is to have this cross-fertilization where teachers are able to, if they wish, to work with different departments with the same student. And that's one, I think, very important thing. We're planning for 40 or 50 years. And the second thing is, I know an awful lot of teachers, public school teachers and private school teachers. And one thing they really look forward to is a facility that they can really work well with their students, better than the more traditional school. So I think that if we do this, we will attract a much high qualified staff who will want to come to Winchester, not because of the quality of education only, but because of the facility itself. I also fear that if we don't do it, a lot of schools, the better and the brightest teachers are going to say, gee, I'm going to look for a place that's a greater opportunity. One of which are a lot of private schools who started 21st century learning 5-6 years ago. So I'm very concerned about that.
So I just one thing to add. It really is about the risk you run, and the question assumes that there's a very straightforward answer based on this one snapshot in time, September of 2013, that the high school is recognized for that award. The recognition for that award has actually taken many, many, many years to achieve. And so the risk that you do run is they're intangibles. We can't quite measure them over the next 10 years, but it goes back to what Charles said. Will we still be able to maintain, retain, and recruit very, very high quality staff? Because because our high-quality staff is a very important piece of, and part of that, that recognition. Will we be able to continue to attract families that are passionate about education, that care deeply about education, to move to Winchester if we don't do anything with that facility? And we know that the quality, the one thing I think we can agree on is that the quality of education that Winchester has supported for years and years has a direct result to housing values and other very important values that the community that the community covets. So it's really the answer is really to look down the road and to ensure that, you know, all of the qualities that have made Winchester the kind of community that it is today is able to continue. We're able to continue with that, and there's a real concern that if we don't move forward with the high school project that reflects those values, that the tide can turn the other way.
I think it's a really important point there to underline that the stakeholders in this critical project to rebuild the high school is not just today's students and future generations of students and their families. Of course, they are key stakeholders, but the stakeholders in this is every single person that lives in this town, in this community, because all of us have a stake in a strong, high-quality public school system. As I said, that's the backbone of the community. That's what supports the business community locally, and that's what supports our property values. And all of us who are property owners here obviously have a stake in maintaining and enhancing our values. And there's nothing that impacts property values more than quality, sustaining a competitive public school system.
I think you could cut to the chase and say that the effect on education with building systems comes post-failing, and that Winchester has a reputation of fixing things before they fail. There are school districts that allow things to fail, and then they have effect on the educational performance, and then you end up on probation in terms of accreditation and so forth. Winchester doesn't have a reputation of going that route. Now, the building is made up of several systems that fail over time. And if you sum up all the systems in the building, some are 80% of useful life, some are 120% of useful life. But for the sake of argument, you could say that the building as a whole is roughly at the end of its useful life. It hasn't, not everything has failed, in a dramatic way, but it's at that critical point where something has to be done during a relatively narrow window so that you fix things before they fail. You don't want to allow things to actually fail, have an effect on education and the company lose accreditation or some other effect, or have to vacate the building until you fix air quality. So that it is prudent, and Winchester has demonstrated the fact they are a prudent community to fix things pre-failure. And that, I think that goes to the heart of answering your question of why things are performing reasonably well now, where you don't want them to go beyond a tipping point and have them fail and have effect on the educational performance.
The vote doesn't, the vote fails in December, is there a chance or a certainty of losing MSBA support? I mean, would MSBA support it the next time around if another plan moved forward, or how would that work? I just want to.
There is no next.
Short answer, you have to go to the end of the line.
It would be a crisis for us. The MSBA has limited resources. There's many other projects in the queue behind us in other towns, other cities. And if we cannot demonstrate that there's local support for the project, they're going to move on, which means that we're back to square one. As the superintendent said, most of these essential repairs that are going to have to go forward anyway, that will cost us millions of dollars, we're going to have to go forward on our own nickel with no support from the state. We could try to consider, putting forward a new plan, going back to the state, we would have to start the process over again, most likely, and we'd be talking, years down the road again that we would lose. And again, no guarantee that they would accept us back into the program.
This process has taken almost 2 years, and that didn't include the time from once you first submitted your statement of interest. So if you add that, it's almost another 6 to 8 months, so 2.5 years. You go back and you start it again, you start studying it. And during this 2.5 years is when you're going to experience some of your key enrollment spikes.
Just detail on, back to that 85 million number, does that include the swing space?
Yes,
Yes, it does.
it does.
So I think it bears, I think we know this, but that's a lot of money. $85 million is a lot of money. $130 million is a lot of money. But we truly believe this is the most cost-effective way to address the needs in the high school and in the community at large. There's been 2 years of rigorous analysis done to look at all the different options, all the different sites, all the different ways that this could be done. Some of those plans would result in a higher cost, some would result in a lower. But at the end of the day, all of the experts who've worked on this for 2 years now believe that this is the smartest, most cost-effective way to meet the needs of the community.
Bill, there was a time when the MSBA was questioning whether the renovation was the most cost, and we had to go through the whole exercise of looking at the town forest, et cetera, et cetera. Was there any one or a few combination of things that persuaded the MSBA that the estimate was correct and not excessive?
Well, I think there's one thing that has made the MSBA support this plan, and that is the thoroughness of the work, the thoroughness of the feasibility study, the completeness, if you will, and collaboration, frankly, with MSBA. They asked us to go back. If you remember, the FPBC reviewed in detail 9 different sites, 12 different sites for a new building. We came down and the FPBC narrowed that down, did cost estimates, and when reporting back to MSBA came back and asked the FPBC to go back to 4 other sites and look at them again, which we did. We invited MSBA out to go to those sites with us. And so I believe that based on the thoroughness and completeness of the feasibility study, both the preliminary and the schematic design, that MSBA is on board with the current plan, and that the current, that this is really the right plan, and at the right cost.
Now, the MSBA was also saying this recently completed high school only cost such and such a number. Was that a problem of just time passing and construction costs rising? Do you know what I'm referring to?
So I'm going to let Lorraine speak to that issue.
Sure, and the MSBA is part of their responses to our first schematic as well as schematic reference other projects that were bid. Some of them were bid in 2009, some were bid in 2010. There has been an increase in the construction market. There was a period where it was very flat, as we all experienced. But if you drive into Boston, you'll see the tower cranes. Construction is at a boom again. We also are asking you and asking your voters to bid on a total project cost. So built within the costs are escalation factors, because we aren't going to be bidding until next year. So you have to factor construction cost increases. We've done an analysis of a lot of those projects that the MSBA referenced and have provided that information back to them, saying if that was bid at when we're bidding, where our assumed start construction was, we are much closer in line. We can't, the price of a car in 2009 is not the same price of a car you're buying next May. So it is a little unfair sometimes to say, well, this was at this price. It's also a factor of different construction types and different activities. We're looking at a construction manager risk and managed process, but we have different conditions that we're managing on the site. Not every project is the same. This is also a large building. This is 288,000 square feet. It's going to hold nearly 1,400 students. So an apples to apples comparison needs to compare to projects of roughly the same square footage and the same population, which, you know, you can look to North Reading, which ended up going back to the voters because they hadn't paid enough for the escalation, because they got caught bidding right when the economy picked up. So they had been assuming the same flatlining as many schools who got in that time frame and experienced great bidding prices. And by the time their bids came in, we were already on the bottom.
Do you know the costs of projects that are going on now? I know Wilmington is building a new high school.
If you go, can I send you to the FAQ? If you go on the project website, there's an FAQ about other towns, and there's a spreadsheet that lists a bunch of other projects, and it tells the enrollment and the square footage and the year of construction for each. And it also tells which of them were used model designs. So there are distinguishing factors for each of the projects.
I think it's the MSBA has pushed us very hard, and as they should, to their credit. I mean, they are stewards of taxpayer money. But the important point at the end of the day is their board would not be signing off on this project as we expect on Wednesday if they didn't think that we had exhausted every option. We looked carefully at every cost. We made this project as cost effective as possible.
Well, I'm thinking of the public that has to vote on this. And 40 years ago, there was a strong element of the community that did not want that high school to be built because they said, we don't need it, it's too expensive. And they had to scale it back, take out the swimming pool, among other things. And
I think you could really isolate this down to 2 bullet points in regards to why it took people a certain amount of time to become comfortable with the cost and the location of the building. One is, without knowing anything about Winchester, you would think intuitively there must be a place to build a new school. But the problem is when you look intensely at and analytically at Winchester, there is very few places where you can put a school this size. And that the only way to come to that conclusion is not through intuition, it's through detailed analysis. The other thing is having experienced the Great Recession, intuitively a few years ago, or when these costs were being considered, or let's say a few months ago, last winter, intuitively you'd say, gee, costs have changed, they're not as expensive as they used to be. That's true intuitively, but when you look at it analytically and in a detailed way, you find out that yes, costs were flat for a while, but now they're rising. And it took people, these two bullets, it took people a certain amount of time to be comfortable with the analysis because it was conflicted by the intuition. But the intuition was not right. The analysis was right. You follow what I'm trying to say?
And to your point on it, imagine if, because there were people who didn't support the new high school back in '71, and there's going to be people who have their reasons and don't support a new project now. But imagine if we hadn't built the new high school back in '71. Our kids would still be going to high school, and it was McCall was the high school. Imagine what that would mean today if that was where the kids were going to high school. First of all, we probably, they wouldn't be able to move because they'd be stuffed in there so tight. Where would they be going to middle school? I mean, you just think through the ramifications of that if we hadn't built that high school, right? So, I mean, history is the best.
So back specifically, Ellen. Ellen, specifically back to one of the specifics of your question. It's important to remember that the Wilmington High School project was bid back in early 2012. And this project will be, the prices will be firmed in 2014. And so there's a 2 years difference. And, the cost have changed. The other piece is...
And the bidding has to reflect that it's phased in over those 3 more additional years. So the contractor takes that into account. What their costs are going to be on a projected basis 2 construction seasons out to theoretically do the last of the 3 floors.
And then the other 2 points I just wanted to make is that it's important to note in regards to the MSBA stance and what I would call the strong discussions that were held between MSBA and the EFPBC in Winchester has all moved to the point where the MSBA has recognized and this is the right project for this town based on that review, and we recognize this because that in their review, they haven't treated this proposal differently because it's not a new school building. They've treated our proposal the very same that they treat all proposals in review, applying their rules, applying their regulations. The fact that we've received additional reimbursement points as a result of that really clear and strong review, I think is reflective of the fact that they also believe that this is the right plan, at the right cost. So I have a high level of confidence in that. And then the last point is back to, the notion that I'm sure back whenever the project had to be approved, 1968, 1969, there were people against it and there had to be adjustments made. Under the rules in place back then, I think the state did contribute money to that project, I'm sure, because the school building authority was in place then under the Department of Education. But if you lost a vote under the old rules, you didn't necessarily lose your spot with the old SBA. They would say, okay, make some adjustments, make some changes, what were the reasons, go out there again and then come back with a modified plan. And so communities prior to 2003 had the opportunity to take many bites at the apple, if a particular plan didn't work. But under the new rules, that has gone by the wayside, and that plays an important piece, I think, in today's day.
And this project is not all things to all people. And you mentioned the pool, right, which came up in then. Once again, we've had dozens, maybe well over 100 people, right, who've been passionately advocating for an aquatic facility, and they'd love to see that included as part of this. But that's not part of the plan. That's not going to be paid for from public dollars. They may move forward. This plan would not get in the way of adding an aquatic facility in the future, but the money would have to be raised privately to do that.
The thrust of your question having to do with other school districts is to compare the cost, the potential cost of our school by square foot cost or student cost. But you have to be very, very careful because the price that we have is already projected for 2 years. And so what Bill just said about a 2-year difference is substantial. Then some high schools were bid in 08 and 09. They really doesn't manage that big cliff. And now those prices are coming back up. But even recognizing a flat economy, things like we're within 128 and 495. That means that the hourly rates of employees of workers, construction workers, is higher than west of 495. So if you compared us to a project out there, there's really about a 15% difference. Our building, as you know, the land around our building has sunk in the last 20 years. And we're going to rectify that. But in order to do that, you have to put in what's called structured fill, which is an expensive thing to do, and raise the elevation of the earth. Those other schools didn't have that kind of cost. So it goes on and on and on. So be very, very careful of comparing costs. I know a lot of friends of mine that said, Charles, I looked up through the website, MSBA website, that school is excellent. And I had to explain to them all of these things. And there are just a list of things that make up the differences. A long list.
I have a question for, I guess, other town projects down the line. So say this gets approved, does this put off any other large capital projects that the town might have in the works or might be considering in the coming years?
Well, this is a large capital project, so it will be the largest that the town has for a long time will entertain. So currently the Board of Selectmen, together with the Capital Planning Committee, Finance Committee, and the School Committee, because the School Committee has other facilities that would be under consideration in the capital plan, are taking a look at what we think the outline needs are over the short term, and we'll try to be able to put into a kind of cohesive statement, cohesive plan, what it is we think our limitations are, or how much it is we can ask the community to undertake all at one time. We haven't quite completed that analysis, but I think by the time town meeting materializes, whether it's the board and or the manager's office, will have that kind of analysis completed and be able to project what it is we think can be done in addition to taking on this high school project over the short term. But I think it's fair to say that without new resources, we'd be somewhat limited in the kinds of things we can do over the next several years. But we consider this to be management does, and I think the individual boards that I just, entities that I just mentioned would also consider this project to be the most important thing that the town has under consideration.
And Lorraine, you said that the new building would be 288,000 square feet. What's the current building?
So the current building is actually 280,000 square feet.
Okay, yep.
20,000 square feet of that is what we consider basement space that's currently subject to flooding. So as part of the new project, we're building a 24,000 square feet addition. So if you look at the 260,000 square feet of first floor, second floor, third floor of existing, plus the 24, it ends up with the rounds out at 288,000 square feet. And the basement, while it will not remain as a functional basement anymore. All the systems will be removed from it, storage will be removed from it, and it will just remain as part of the base of the building. It will not be, it's not habitable space and will be used in the future.
260 plus 24.
It rounds out, I don't have, I'm not with the exact numbers. So it's, the existing, what we're reusing is 264,000.
Okay.
277, plus 24,563 for 288,840.
Yeah.
And that includes the existing basement.
That does not include the
Does not.
Just comment on the previous question you asked, too. This is a very important one. I think 2 points there were repeated or mentioned there. One is that I think it's fair to say the unanimous of all local town and state leadership for the community that the high school is the #1 priority. So we do have other needs, but we're all on the same page that this is the top priority for this community. And then the second thing I wanted to say is there are some capital projects where we are expecting to rely on state and federal funding. So we will be able to still continue to make progress on some other major projects. Most notably would be the Winchester Center commuter rail station, because we're not relying on local funding for that project.
I have a question back to our project here. As far as the field goes, there's going to be additional parking. But are you redoing any of the play areas? Or is that just not part of it because of the iffiness of the flood mitigation project?
Well, Lorraine's going to tell you what their field treatment consists of with the new parking, but what we are looking at is the integration, the connectedness between the idea of the flood mitigation, what's called the Skilling's culvert, as it relates to the potential treatment of the project plans for, I call it Skilling's Field, Cha-Cha Field, whatever it's called. So, yeah.
I read something about this in the Daily Times Chronicle. Isn't the whole flood mitigation thing still on hold, waiting on Woburn and Medford?
This is a big segue, but we can take it. So the flood mitigation program has a series of consecutive steps that have to be taken.
Yeah,
Right?
and Woburn and Medford come.
So Craddock Locks is in process, the correction that is needed down
That's been
there.
funded?
Yes.
Yes.
That Mass DOT is in charge of that project, and it's moving forward.
So
Okay.
that
the
will,
early part of that program, the locks will come out as part of.
actually next year,
rebuilding.
construction begins spring of next year.
So-
And that'll be the first phase, would be to remove the locks.
Okay.
So that will not in any way, that should not in any way delay our continued flood mitigation progress.
What about Woburn?
Woburn, yeah, the
Scally.
dam is under consideration by administration and finance at the state level now. Jason's office has been working on that, so we're hoping that that is a project that is paid for out of bond money that is set aside at the state level for bridges and dams. And then the other project that is necessary is the Mount Vernon Street culvert, so the bridge work that has to be done there. The point is, in order to use the culvert as a piece of the flood mitigation program, all of those other things do have to fall in place previously, but we could build the culvert. The town could put it in place now. And as those other pieces came online, it would then be available to accept water, in theory, as part of flood mitigation. And so what we're trying to study is how that all fits, when we think those other pieces will happen, but also, is there a cost savings for considering putting the culvert in now, based upon the amount of treatment that the high school plan calls for at Skilling's Field. So the board will get more information after our October 7th meeting to make that determination as to whether or not they're linked or can be separated. But I think Lorraine's probably best to tell you what it is the program now considers to be done over its terms and so on.
Just to be clear, so it's less an issue, Ellen, of the sequencing of the flood mitigation. We don't believe that we cannot move forward with the planning and the construction for the culvert, because the other projects are on schedule, are making progress. So it's really not an issue with that, but more how it would integrate with the high school rebuilding and whether it just makes sense to do them at the same time.
Not just from a money standpoint, but from a time standpoint, right? Because these fields are going to be torn up because of construction, and then would need to be again.
Yeah, well, I understand all that.
That's really the consideration.
So yeah, your question's right. Those other things before it is operable as a piece of the flood mitigation program, those other things have to fall in place. We think they're hopefully falling into place. But
And this was the major reason that the Skilling's Field was out as a site for a new school construction, because the schedule was so.
Exactly.
But
Yes, it doesn't make the
that's
flood
not,
plain right.
but that's not just 3 projects, that's a half dozen projects.
The
So-
culvert alone is not the reason that site is out. Is that it's that site?
Craddock Locks,
The
it's
entire
Scally
site.
The Mount
Dam,
Vernon
it's
Street
the Mount Vernon
Bridge.
Street Bridge, yeah.
The Morocco Railroad Bridge. So, I mean, that was, to get to Bill's earlier point about why the MSBA was convinced on these other sites, I mean, that was 6 years out. You've got 6
Yeah.
years of construction escalation, plus 6 years of living in an inadequate building.
Before.
So my question is, if the new school on the Skillings was so far into the future, why would the construction of the extra?
Only because this is the right time to figure out whether you save money on the Skilling's culvert costs. If you integrate it.
But I think your answer was you could build it but not use it.
Right.
As part of the.
And even if it was built, we still couldn't, you couldn't then, just because it was installed but not used, you couldn't then build a high school on it. It would have to be in use in order for the floodplain to be
To
redrawn.
lower, because right now, that site that we propose is in the floodplain. And only until all these projects are complete, the floodplain will reduce 3 feet, hence create an opportunity to build a culvert.
According to the flood mitigation plan, this is not the time to build a culvert. According to the high school building plan, this might be.
Might be.
Does that make sense? Because if we can...
You've put your finger on my understanding why you're talking about doing the high school culvert this early.
Yes.
because the state said Woburn and Medford first,
Right.
and then you move upstream,
And Mount Vernon.
Mount Vernon. That's what I mean by moving upstream.
Well, remember, they can move in parallel. It's just a sequencing of sort of when they sort of are turned on, if you will. So you can be making progress upstream. We can be doing engineering work. We could
It just,
in this
it
case,
seemed premature
construction.
to me to be talking about doing.
Normally would be, except for the amount of treatment that is now being anticipated on the field.
Okay.
The call also didn't change the fact that the scaling site was extremely limited. It actually was not a very well-received plan for a new high school building. It was very constrained in terms of parking and being pushed deep back into that neighborhood close to the railroad.
Okay.
So there was a lot of
So
What does happen?
now could you explain what's going to happen with the field and the timing of it?
You sure you want to hear that?
Yes, I do.
I know you've been following the project, Alan, but originally, as it stands today, the parking is all on the high school side of the train tracks, if you want to call it, whereas the connection underneath the train track side of the field. But as part of the overall site planning process, as we're making the building more energy efficient, we're making the building more daylit, a lot of conversation revolved around needing to make it a more friendly, environmentally friendly space as well, by removing the extended blacktops, by removing the asphalt farm, as we like to call things, and having some more green open space. Meeting certain requirements for parking as well as circulation. If you take the parking away from the high school site, we need to accommodate it somewhere else. So as we started to develop concepts, we looked at relocating almost half the parking to the Skilling's Field site. By wrapping it
And
around,
Lorraine is how many spaces?
I think we have 160 spaces over on the high school, on the Skilling's Field site. Do I have that number right, Bill?
Yeah, something like that.
It's close.
Yeah, it's about that. So by wrapping the parking around, trying to, and working with your local committees, we're working it in with the proposed bike path that's planned for town, maintaining that concept. We then have to relocate the ball field because the backstop is closer into that corner today. As part of the overall project, we analyzed, could we then also redevelop the rest of the field? And that was a cost that was brought to the building committee and decided that it wasn't necessary for the high school site and wasn't a cost that the committee wanted to add on at this time. So that was something that we took away from the project, is redeveloping all that site. So the baseball diamond is being relocated as a function of moving parking over to that side. When that is done, one of the first things we wanted to do in the first phase that we still want to do is put in that temporary parking. So build out parking for temporary reasons because we need lay down construction space on the high school site. Whether that gets final pavement at the first season or whether that gets final pavement in the end is something within the control of the EFPBC and the design team in the town. So if that culvert is planned and we know you're going to be ripping up through there, that will be temporary pavement so that you're not spending the money on finalizing everything to come through and cut through it 2 years from now. So we have a window of 3 years from start to finish that we can work with the town. We actually have also hired the town's floodplain mitigation consultant to work with us so that it can be closely coordinated as the high school design goes on. They've been on board from day one, and they'll continue to work with us and work with the town as we move forward to make sure that the two projects are not clipping one another, that we're accommodating each other's schedules, and that we're looking out for the best interest of the town with respect to not doing rework.
So is the baseball field laid out?
It is relaid out, it's relocated, the baseball diamond currently has irrigation, so that irrigation will get relocated, the backstop gets relocated, so, but we are not affecting the fields outside of that, so we're not removing the track that is no longer used there. The rest of the fields are just, it's a big open grass space where the fields get lined out. So we'll have a limited work section where the contractor won't be allowed to go onto that area.
So what will the staging area be?
On the high school site,
Yes. They won't have to use the field?
they won't have to use the field.
Okay.
Our intent is to try and give the baseball diamond back as early in the process as possible. We have to look at that with phasing and see what makes best in the long term.
So you're not sure which phase that's going to get attached to?
Correct. The temporary parking will be right in the beginning, but when the baseball diamond gets finalized and gets turned back over, that detail hasn't been developed at this time.
There'll be a staging area that kind of moves around the building with the renovation. It's not going to be set in one location, it's gonna move with the renovation.
Because we need to keep the contractor and the trailers and the laydown close to the areas where the contractor is working to avoid students and parking and staff moving back and forth between those areas.
Assuming the vote goes forward, what's the next stage in the process?
The design development phase starts, so there's 4 phases for design. There's feasibility study, schematic design, design development, and construction documents. So we've completed the feasibility study and the schematic design. We would start design development, where we're taking the concept schematic design diagrams and building them to the next level, developing them further. From there, we go into construction documents, which are the physical drawings that the contractor will build the project from. That takes about 9 months, that process from start to finish. But during that time, we'll have what we'll call early packages. So we'll do an early package to get the piles done so they can be driven in the summer. There'll be some early tent parking work that will be developed, so that can be done during the summer. So, and from there, we'll go into construction. So there'll be construction starting while we're still completing the bid documents.
The committee has chosen to elect to go with the CNF risk process.
Which gives you that ability.
They'll be brought on board as do friends.
Okay. Did you say that there had to be some bidding on this first, or?
There'll be early packages. Those early packages will be.
First, explain we select the construction manager first.
So the construction manager at risk is a process that you go through where you pick a contractor, basically a construction manager, to work with you. They come on board while we're still designing the project. The intent is to have them on board right at the beginning of design development, and so they're on board in late December. They work with us, they do constructability reviews, they do cost estimates, they work with subcontractors. They are part of the team analyzing the drawings before they even put a shovel on the ground. So they are really your partner as your construction manager. They're looking at what we've developed as phasing guidelines. They may come up with recommendations how to do things differently, how to improve it. They'll look at security, they'll look at safety. And they will then bid the packages. As we develop early bid packages, they will put them out to bid, analyze the bids, and start the construction process.
But you don't have that person on board yet?
No.
Okay. So that would happen after the vote?
So the preparatory work for that is going on right now. You have to apply to the Inspector General for approval to use a CNF risk. So that preparation is coming up very soon. That application is going in. A committee is then formed to review proposals and evaluate. The intention is to have everything ready so that once the vote, after the vote occurs on December 10th, if it's positive, that you were able to get that construction manager on board within the next 3 to 4 weeks. It is really essential to have them on board as early as possible because they work with you on material selection, they work with you on constructability, we work on timelines, on phasing, and they're buying into the overall project. They're going to build it. We want them to buy in as a team. If they see what we see, and they understand the needs and what's important and how to work around the building.
And that method of construction permits the flexibility, as Lorraine is saying, buying early packages, so that you can still be, certain subcontractors will be able to come onto the site much earlier than in a traditional way. Hence, the overall schedule is tighter.
I think I have 2 more questions. Aside from the selectmen, have any other boards or committees given opinions on the project? Planning board, design review?
Planning board, the design review has seen it, but they'll continue seeing it during the design development phase. And of course, the school committee.
Traffic advisory, we've met with traffic advisory, with engineering.
Do you mean having taken official position?
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone has yet. It will certainly come up as an article at town meeting, so we will have to have an official position then. I haven't heard any negatives out of official boards, but I don't think that they have taken a vote yet.
Okay. And my other question is taxes.
Yes.
I saw a number in the Globe article. Is that correct? The
General,
impact
yeah.
on the...
Yes. We're talking about the same number.
I've forgotten what it is.
The management team, under the direction of the board, again, the Board of Selectmen, that is trying to come up with a very detailed and comprehensive cost scenario for, across a range of tax-paying experiences in the town. But over the early feasibility study effort here, we've used the general analysis that on an average bill for the average valued home on a 20-year basis, and again, we're taking a look at different options, could be 20 years, could be 30 years, that the cost of the bond would be spread over. But on that average of 20 years, average home value is $750,000, current average tax bill of about $9,800, that we think the cost for the town's share, which is the earlier figure, just short of $86 million, is about $800 annually.
Yeah.
So what we want to give the board is, we want to break that down and have it be a little bit more targeted to the actual experience of the Winchester taxpayer. So somebody whose bill is somewhere in the $5,000 range, here is what you could expect your experience to be. $8,000 range, $10,000 range, so on and so on. So we're preparing all of that for the board's analysis as we certainly get to a town meeting.
Do you know what the VO impact is?
It was almost 20 million, so probably about a quarter of this. And we could go back and get those numbers, but
It was 200 was the estimated. Yeah.
200?
Yeah, the Winchester
For
cost
20
was
years.
18 million, so. Cost of Winchester was 18 million.
So the
17.9.
average tax
yeah, it's
increase.
about a quarter of what we're talking here.
So the 200 tax increase for VO on the average?
I'd say
VO, sorry. Oh, okay.
Just finished the building.
It's an elementary school, open to zero.
To accommodate all that enrollment growth.
Well, this is the way a lot of people are going to be looking at it. I'm already paying this much extra for you. You want me to pay this? And what's the next one you're going to ask?
We are specifically trying to come up with an answer to that question of when can the public expect that we're going to need more money. We're trying to, I don't believe this, well, there are lots of needs out there. There always are lots of needs. How long are we going to go before we claim we have some emergency and we have to dig back into taxpayers' pockets? If we can give a good answer that that's not soon, I think it helps people. And we're trying to come up with that.
Ellen, I think it's fair to say, though, I don't mean to speak that from the sides here, but I think it's fair to say that this is not about $0 or $800. There will be a cost to this community. We've packaged this in such a way to maximize the time efficiency, cost efficiencies, and make sure that we're hitting all the major goals of this project that were outlined from the very beginning. But if this is not successful, we will still have a cost, we will still have a timing problem, and we will still have the goals that need to be addressed.
We must have those students that are coming. That's not an option.
Right.
We have to fix the environmental issues with the building. It has, water penetration on a regular basis. Right? So this is part of what Cindy's referring to. And that will constantly eat away at town resources. It won't be, those kinds of efforts piecemeal will not be contributed to by the school building authority on a piecemeal basis. It's unlikely to be contributed to.
And we would hope that taxpayers in town would understand that although it is a substantial annual commitment and sacrifice, it's a household budgetary impact. That what we were talking about earlier, what is the return on value to home value by having a premier educational system? in perception. What part of the educational product that gets delivered annually by the town goes into that average value of $750,000, which is, it's one of the outliers in all of Massachusetts. It is that way for a reason. And I think if you talk to the real estate brokers in town, they would tell you that real estate values are as healthy as they are because all of these new families that lead to this enrollment growth, which again is an outlier, 25%, probably it's the highest north of Boston, probably one of the very highest in Massachusetts over the last 10 years, as Representative was saying earlier. How much of that is attributable in the competition for housing product is attributable to the fact that the town delivers a first-rate educational product? How does this new facility play into that? So if you took the $800 annually and you multiply it times 20 years, and you take that average value number, $750,000, does the high school mean 10% of that growth over the next 20 years? Do that analysis on the average value and what you end up spending over the next 20 years to help this high school along, and more than pays for itself. It's why Winchester is what it is in terms of its perception.
Are we done?
Yeah.
You should both go on a tour if you haven't yet.
They're still on May 7th?
It's scheduled for Saturday mornings.
I know.
Actually, this week it'll be at
I read
2:30.
that in the Daily News.
Great job.
But you need to go along and check the schedule because we are not, there are no tours scheduled for the Columbus Day weekend, right?
And this weekend it's at 2:30 because
Yeah.
there's SAT tests.
Right. So just check the schedule.
Could you put the schedule into an article? That could be a different article, but put the schedule into your paper.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I mean, is that on the Winchester HS project?
So
Or is that?
if you direct people to that website,
Yeah.
there are a couple different links to take a tour.
Thank you. I'm sure you
Frequently asked
I'm sure you made that
There are
decision, right?
FAQs. You can submit a question.
I wrote the
There's an email address where citizens can submit a question, they'll get answered and then get added to the FAQs. And you can also sign up to get push emails that give you weekly updates on the project.
And the ongoing articles that both of your organizations have published also there as well at the website.
We talked a little bit about the flood mitigation in terms of, Ellen especially asked some questions about the culvert and the time of the culvert. Do you have enough information in terms of the building, the site it's at, and how it really is unlikely to be impacted by the flooding due to the work being done in the basement, the mechanicals we moved out, some of those pieces, or if we covered that for you?
Are you doing work to, because it's in the floodplain, you're doing anything to the foundation to
Remediate it?
for waterproofing or?
We're putting a moisture barrier underneath the first floor slab, which will help some of the moisture. Until the full flood mitigation work is done all the way up, the potential flood path is still would flood part of the basement. In the future, when all that work is done, only the very smallest corner of the site will be within the floodplain in the future. So the project as a whole will significantly improve the overall health of the high school once that work is done long term. But there are mitigation techniques and construction activities that we have planned for the existing high school because until that work is done, there is always the potential.
In the additions are slabs, so there will not be crawl spaces under
There'll be no crawl
the
spaces.
additions.
Of course, the pessimists say it's not, the floodplain's not going to shrink because there's going to be more more water going into the river from the
The
impervious surface and the construction upstream.
the building is out of the floodplain right now. It's to stay out of the floodplain. We need to work on flood mitigation, but the work on flood mitigation is not required to keep the high school whole. It might be required to keep all the parking lots dry or something like that, but the building is safe.
The finished floor of the first floor is 3 feet currently above the floodplain. In the future, it'll be 5 feet above the floodplain.
I thought it was reversed, 2 and 3. Is it
3 and 5.
Is it 3 and 2? Okay, that's even better.
Well, there are those of us who remember when the high school was closed for, what, 3 weeks?
Oh,
Because
more
the
than
basement.
96?
So, you can
Oh, I think
explain
it
what that
was
was. So that had more to do with being able to, if the water table fills up, you can't push water out, you can't flush toilets. To push water away from the building, part of this plan is to, maybe you can explain it better than I can.
Well, that was the most recent floodings that we've had. But the building, when the building was closed for, I think it was longer than 3 weeks.
It was much longer.
3 months?
But
That's
that
when
was
the
back,
electrical system
right, in 1996.
Yeah.
That's when all of the electrical system was, all that had to be replaced down in the equipment in the basement. And there were not sufficient pumps at the time. And so there was work done as a result of that closure to make sure that the water could be at least pumped out and had somewhere to go so that those mechanical systems, wouldn't be impacted. The latest closure, I think it was 3 years ago now. Seems like a million years. Maybe it was just 2 years ago. The high school was closed for 3 days, but that was not due to the fact that systems weren't working at the high school. What wasn't able to work was the toilets, because the MWRA system there had backed up, and I forget all the technical aspect of that, but that's been addressed since then.
And it's addressed in the current project that we have included a holding
Right.
tank on site.
Yeah.
In the event that occurred again, you would be able to flush the toilets
Yeah.
until that.
Right.
There's another expense that I was telling you about before.
We're wrapping up on a high note here.
But in neither of those events was the first floor ever flooded.
No.
The first floor has never flooded.
No,
Right.
no.
Right. Exactly.
So anything else? You've been doing a great job covering it anyway, but this is as comprehensive an approach as we've been able to put together. And votes on Wednesday, looking forward to that
Yep.
big spring vote.
Thank you for your time this morning.
I was curious though why you didn't schedule this after the vote, just to be sure the numbers.
So very confident.
You're very confident? Well, my question was on not whether they voted up or down, but that the number would be, that you're giving us is accurate.
I think
We're very confident on the numbers. You have a meeting with the MSBA in advance of their vote. So the staff who are working with us from the MSBA, we had a 4-hour meeting, Bill, and Neil, we went through every single line item on their budget. So we're very confident in the numbers.
And the board members have received their packets for Wednesday's meeting, the MSBA boards. So the information that they're voting on has been forwarded to them at this point.
So I do have Alan's email, but Dave, if you want to give me your email, and I'll get
Sure.
these renderings and these images
Oh,
out of
great.
it so that you can use them in the article.
Great. Yeah, I'm just gonna go around and get a couple name spellings.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.